The blood on Martha's apron had dried to rust-brown stains by the time Samuel found her standing in the kitchen, clutching a burlap sack, like her life depended on it. She didn't look up when his boots scraped across the threshold, didn't flinch when the door slammed shut behind him. Just stood there, swaying slightly, her knuckles white against the rough fabric. "Martha?" His voice cracked the silence like a whip. She finally raised her eyes. They were hollow, distant, the look of someone who'd seen too much and understood too little. "You'll hate me for this," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind rattling the windows. Samuel stepped closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. 23 years of marriage, and he'd never seen her like this. Not when they lost the first baby, not when the drought nearly broke them, not even when her father died in his arms on this very kitchen floor. "What's in the sack, Martha?" She didn't answer. Instead, she set it down on the scarred wooden table, with the reverence of someone placing flowers on a grave. The fabric sagged, revealing the outline of something small and still. Outside, thunder rolled across the Montana plains like distant cannon fire. The storm had been building all day, turning the sky the color of old blood. Samuel had spent the afternoon mending fence posts, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Now, standing in his own kitchen, that feeling crystallized into cold certainty. Martha's hands trembled as she reached for the sack's opening. "I found him this morning," she said, "down by Miller's Creek. He was all ready." Her voice broke. Samuel's throat went dry. Miller's Creek bordered the Crow Reservation. Nothing good ever came from that boundary line, especially not lately. The tensions had been rising for months, ever since the government had cut their beef rations again. Hungry people did desperate things. "Martha, don't," but she was already unwrapping the sack, her movements slow and deliberate. The burlap fell away like flower petals, revealing what lay inside. Samuel's world tilted sideways. It wasn't what he'd expected. Not stolen cattle or missing supplies, or even evidence of the rustling that had been plaguing neighboring ranches. It was something far worse. Something that would change everything between them, between their family and the reservation, between the fragile peace they'd all been clinging to. The kitchen fell silent, except for the tick of the mantel clock, and Martha's ragged breathing. "Jesus Christ, Martha," Samuel whispered. "What have you done?" The infant couldn't have been more than 6 months old. His skin was the warm bronze of his Crow heritage, and despite everything, he was beautiful, perfect even. A small beaded bracelet circled one tiny wrist, the kind Crow mothers made for protection. He was alone, Martha said, her voice gaining strength, crying by the creek bank. No one else around for miles. "I waited, Samuel. I waited near 2 hours thinking someone would come back for him." Samuel stared at the child, his mind racing. Someone will come looking. Maybe, maybe not. Martha's jaw set in that stubborn line he knew too well. "But I couldn't leave him there. Not with the storm coming, not with the wolves." The practical side of Samuel's brain, the part that had kept them alive and prosperous for 2 decades, was already calculating the consequences. A white rancher's wife taking a Crow baby. In these times with these tensions, it was madness. The reservation leaders would see it as theft. The townsfolk would see it as Indian-loving foolishness. Either way it would destroy them. But the child stirred in the sack, making a soft sound that hit Samuel somewhere deep in his chest. They'd tried for children after the miscarriages. Tried and failed and finally accepted that God had other plans. Martha had never spoken of it, but he'd seen how she looked at other women's babies, how she'd volunteered to help with difficult births, staying long after the danger passed. "We have to take him back," Samuel said, hating the words even as he spoke them. Martha's face crumpled. Back to what? There was no camp, no teepee, nothing, just him crying until his voice gave out. "There's got to be an explanation. Maybe his parents were hunting, or maybe they're dead." The words hung between them like smoke. Maybe this little one is all that's left of someone's world. Samuel moved to the window, parting the curtains with 2 fingers. The storm was closer now, lightning forking across the darkening sky. In weather like this, travel would be treacherous. But come morning, people would start asking questions. They always did in small towns, especially when it came to anything involving the reservation. The Millers saw me riding back. Martha continued, asked if I'd found any strays. I told them no, but Mrs. Miller has eyes like a hawk. She'll remember my horse was carrying extra weight. Samuel closed his eyes. Elizabeth Miller was the worst kind of gossip, the kind who dressed up malice as Christian concern. If she suspected anything unusual, the whole county would know by Sunday service. The baby made another sound, stronger this time. When Samuel turned back, Martha had lifted him from the sack, cradling him against her chest with natural ease. The sight stopped Samuel cold. Look at him, Martha whispered. Really look. Samuel forced himself to see past the complications, past the danger. The child was thin but not starving, alert but not frightened. Someone had loved him, cared for him until what? Hoofbeats drummed in the distance, barely audible above the thunder. Samuel's blood turned to ice water. Martha, someone's coming. The riders appeared through the rain like ghosts materializing from smoke. 4 of them, moving with the careful purpose of men on serious business. Samuel recognized Sheriff Dalton's broad silhouette, even through the downpour, and his stomach dropped into his boots. Get him upstairs, Samuel hissed. Now, Martha was already moving, wrapping the baby in her shawl as she headed for the back staircase. Her footsteps disappeared into the upper reaches of the house, just as the riders pulled up outside. Samuel opened the front door before they could knock, trying to project the easy confidence of a man with nothing to hide. Sheriff, hell of a night to be out riding. Dalton removed his hat, shaking off the rain. Water dripped from his mustache as he studied Samuel's face. Samuel, we're looking for something that's gone missing. Missing? Samuel stepped aside, letting the men enter. He recognized the others now. Deputy Carson, Tom Weatherby from town, and Joseph Running Wolf from the reservation. The last one made Samuel's pulse quicken. Joseph only came to town for serious matters. Baby went missing from the reservation this morning. Dalton continued, his eyes never leaving Samuel's face. 6-month-old boy. Families beside themselves with worry. Samuel kept his expression neutral, but inside, relief and guilt warred for control. The child upstairs had parents, people who loved him, who were probably out searching in this storm. But Martha, that's terrible, Samuel said. Haven't seen hide nor hair of anyone today though. Been working the south pasture since dawn. Joseph Running Wolf stepped forward. His weathered face was set in hard lines, and his dark eyes held a pain that went bone deep. Little Crow was taken from his grandmother's teepee while she slept. She's old, sick, didn't hear anything. Taken. Samuel's mouth went dry. You mean, someone came in the night? Joseph continued. Left no tracks we could follow in this mud, but neighbors saw a rider heading toward Miller's Creek around dawn. Tom Weatherby spat into the brass spittoon by the door. Could be anyone. Lots of folks ride that way for town. But Joseph's eyes never left Samuel's face. The grandmother, she had a vision, saw her grandson safe in a white woman's arms, said the woman meant no harm, only wanted to help. The silence stretched like a taut rope. Upstairs, Samuel heard the faint creak of floorboards. Martha moving carefully across the bedroom floor. The baby had to be getting hungry. How long before he started crying? Sheriff Dalton cleared his throat. We're checking all the ranches, Samuel. Just being thorough. You understand? Of course. Samuel's throat felt like sandpaper. Martha's upstairs resting. She's been feeling poorly. More footsteps overhead, too soft for anyone else to notice. But Samuel heard them, along with the whisper of fabric and what might have been a stifled sob. Joseph tilted his head slightly, listening. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, or maybe understanding. Storm's getting worse, Dalton observed. We should head back before the creek floods. Wait. Joseph's voice cut through the drumming rain. I need to ask Mrs. Fletcher something. Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs. She's sleeping. The storm has her nerves on edge. Just one question. Joseph's tone was gentle but implacable. About her ride this morning. Thunder crashed overhead, so loud it seemed to shake the house. In the brief silence that followed, they all heard it. A baby's cry from the second floor, quickly muffled but unmistakable. The four men stared at the ceiling, then at Samuel. His face had gone white as winter snow. "Samuel," Sheriff Dalton said quietly, "I think we need to talk to Martha after all." Martha appeared at the top of the stairs without being called, the baby cradled in her arms. She'd changed into her Sunday dress and combed her hair, as if preparing for something momentous. Her face was calm now, resolved in a way that made Samuel's chest tighten with fear. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said, addressing Joseph directly. The Crow man nodded slowly. "Little Crow's family is worried. Little Crow's family is worried. Little Crow." Martha tested the name, smiling down at the child. "Is that what you're called, sweet one?" She descended the stairs with the natural grace of a woman born to motherhood, and Samuel watched the four men's faces transform as they saw her with the baby. Even Tom Weatherby's perpetual scowl softened. "Mrs. Fletcher," Sheriff Dalton began, but Martha raised a gentle hand. "Let me tell you what happened," she said, settling into the rocking chair by the fireplace. The baby nestled against her, content and unafraid. "I was checking the fence line by Miller's Creek when I heard crying. Found him alone on the bank, wrapped in this." She held up a small blanket, intricately woven with traditional Crow patterns. Joseph's sharp intake of breath was audible. "That belongs to Mourning Dove," he whispered. "Little Crow's grandmother." Martha nodded. "He was cold, hungry. I waited, thinking someone would return, but the storm was coming." And she looked down at the child, her voice growing thick. "I couldn't leave him. You should have brought him straight to the reservation," Tom Weatherby said, but his voice lacked its usual bite. "Should I?" Martha's eyes flashed. "In this weather, with creek running high and lightning splitting the sky, what if something had happened on the way? What if I'd never made it?" Joseph stepped closer, and Martha held out the baby without hesitation. The moment the child was in his arms, Little Crow's eyes opened, dark and alert, fixed on Joseph's face with obvious recognition. "He knows you," Martha observed. "I'm his uncle." Joseph's voice was thick with emotion. "My sister's boy." The word sisters hung in the air like a prayer. Samuel saw the truth dawn on Martha's face, the weight of what this child meant, the love that surrounded him, even in his absence. "Where is she?" Martha asked quietly. "His mother." Joseph's jaw tightened. "Fever took her 3 days ago. Little Crow's father died in a hunting accident last winter. Only Mourning Dove left to care for him, and she's—" He trailed off, looking down at the baby. "She's dying," Martha finished. Joseph nodded. "Doctor says maybe a week." She wanted to see Little Crow one more time, to sing him the old songs before. Martha's hand flew to her throat. "Oh dear God, she must think he's lost forever." She thinks many things in her fever dreams, but this morning, she opened her eyes and told me he was safe. Said she saw him in the arms of a white woman with a good heart. Said I would find him when the time was right. The room fell silent except for the storm's fury and the soft sound of Little Crow's breathing. Samuel watched his wife's face, seeing the moment her heart broke and mended itself around a larger truth. "Take him home," Martha whispered. "Take him to his grandmother." But as Joseph turned to leave, Martha stood abruptly. "Wait, please. Let me come with you." The ride to the reservation took 2 hours through mud and driving rain. Martha sat behind Samuel on his horse, holding Little Crow against the storm while Joseph and the others led the way. She'd packed a bag with baby clothes she'd sewn years ago and never used, along with fresh milk and clean blankets. Mourning Dove's teepee sat apart from the others, glowing softly with lamplight. Even from outside, they could hear her labored breathing, punctuated by whispered words in Crow. Joseph ducked inside first, speaking rapidly in his native tongue. The old woman's voice rose with joy and relief, and when Martha entered moments later, she found herself face to face with eyes that held a lifetime of stories. "You, Morning Dove," whispered in accented English, "the woman from my dream." Martha knelt beside the bed, still cradling Little Crow. "I'm sorry I took him. I was only trying to help." The old woman's weathered hand reached out, touching Martha's cheek with surprising gentleness. "You did help. You kept him safe when I could not. But now he's home." "Yes." Morning Dove's eyes grew distant. "But home is not just a place. Sometimes it is a person. Sometimes it is a choice." Martha placed Little Crow in his grandmother's arms, watching the old woman's face transform with peace. For long minutes Morning Dove sang in a voice like wind through prairie grass, ancient songs that spoke of protection and love, and the endless circle of life. When the songs ended, she looked at Martha with eyes that seemed to see everything. "He will need a mother soon, someone who understands that love has no color, no borders." Martha's breath caught. "I don't understand. I have seen many things in my dreams." Morning Dove continued, "I have seen you, white woman, raising my grandson with stories of both worlds. I have seen him grown strong, a bridge between our peoples." Joseph stepped forward. "Grandmother, you're tired. Rest now." But the old woman's grip tightened on Martha's hand. "When I am gone, will you remember? Will you help him remember?" Martha's tears fell freely now. "Yes, if you'll let me. If it's what you want, it is what must be." Morning Dove smiled, and for a moment she looked decades younger. Love finds a way even through the storm. 3 days later, Morning Dove passed peacefully in her sleep, Little Crow cradled in her arms. Joseph found Martha at the funeral, standing apart from the other mourners, but present nonetheless, tears streaming down her face as the old songs filled the air. "She left something for you," he said, pressing a small bundle into Martha's hands. Inside was the beaded bracelet from Little Crow's wrist, along with a letter written in careful English. "For the mother who found him by the creek, teach him to walk in both worlds." Years later, Martha would watch her son, for that's what Little Crow became, legally and in every way that mattered. Graduate from the territorial school with honors in both English and Crow studies. She would see him become a translator, a peacemaker, a bridge between worlds, just as his grandmother had prophesied. But on quiet evenings when the wind whispered across the Montana plains, Martha would hold that beaded bracelet and remember the storm that brought them together. She would remember an old woman's wisdom and the choice that changed everything. Not the choice to take, but the choice to love without condition. In the end, that made all the difference. The last light of sunset painted the prairie gold as Martha rocked on her porch, watching her son teach his own children the old songs Morning Dove had sung. The storm had passed long ago, but its gift remained, a family bound not by blood, but by something far stronger. Love, as it turned out, truly did find a way.